Back to our English first additional language lessons by Ma'am Churi. I hope that the previous segment was quite enriching for you guys with regard to writing or approaching creative writing, which is English FAL, first additional language paper 3. Now, in our previous segment, we delve deeper into the types of essays and how to approach different types of essays. And I talked into greater length, if not primarily, about the type of an essay which is called or labeled narrative essay. And I said I would encourage, as an educator, given the experience that I have within the teaching fraternity, I would advise grade 12 learners to write narrative essay, practice telling a story. It is the easiest form of essay, unlike arguing or discussing or persuading somebody or even reflective, because even sometimes a reflective essay can be quite difficult, to sustain it until the conclusion part. But if you tell a story, it is easier to have a plot in mind and then to unfold the ideas, if not the events, based on the plot to reach the climax of the plot and to reach the denouement where you are now concluding your essay. So what you're going to do today is to look into the nuggets, if not things that can assist you, if not the tips that can assist you on how to tell a good story. Okay, right. Now I'm going to do a review of 10 things to remember when writing a narrative essay. Remember, a narrative essay coming from the word narrate, you're going to narrate in the first person voice using your own experience. Second person voice using your own experience. And then when you narrate, it's when you tell a story. Let me go back to what I discussed in the previous lesson before this one, or previous segment before this one. We spoke about adhering to the same tense. In most cases, when you narrate, you talk about things that already happened. So it is important to use a simple past tense, not a past progressive tense or perfect past tense where you use the word have and has, because now it's difficult to maintain such sentences. The minute you include such complex tenses, they will prompt you to write what we normally call complex sentences. Complex sentences are actually sentences that are joined using more than one conjunction. Remember, we've got a simple sentence, just a pure sentence without a conjunction. A compound sentence, that's when you connect two ideas using one conjunction. It might be and, it might be so, it might be but. And then when you have now complex sentences, that's when now you're connecting close to 3 to 4 ideas. And the problem with complex sentences is that if your writing skill is not intact, you run the risk of losing marks and having spelling errors or concord errors where subject and verb do not agree. So write simple past tense. Like earlier on when I said, instead of saying we were cooking, just say we cooked on that day. No, to avoid prolonging your sentences unnecessarily. Now, let us look into the number one, your story beginning. Remember what I said in our previous segment is that a good essay will have a very strong introduction and you close with a bang. So there must be a balance between the introduction and the conclusion part. You need to have a very thought intriguing. Your essay must just say to me, scream to me, say, read more. And you develop that writing skill. You must also have a very strong concluding paragraph. Now, when you tell a story, let us say it was the best day of my life. I'm going to narrate about maybe a day I graduated. I'm just making a mere example. In a narrative essay, you do not begin your introductory paragraph with a topic. Please do not begin with the topic. We know the topic. Of course, you need to identify the topic that you are going to write about in your answer book. To say, I'm going to use topic 2. Then you rewrite the topic, the day I saw red, or the best day of my life, right? Okay, for an example, the examiner will say, and then there was silence. Let me use that one. And then there was silence. That is the topic. You narrate a story based on that topic. You cannot start in your introductory part and say, and then there was silence. No, who's going to read that essay? It's not even thought-provoking. It's not even attracting me as a marker or as a reader. What you then need to do, ensure that you use the topic to close your essay. The best skill is to use the topic to do what? At your conclusion. Narrate the events that happened. What is that something bad or good that happened, and then you close your essay with the topic. And now you can use, your story needs a strong beginning. You can achieve this using one of the following methods. One, you may use a dialogue, right? I'll show you. Two, you may use a question, which is mostly the rhetorical question. Three, which is important, a vivid description, where you paint the mood and the picture for us. You know, how the day started. Was it a gloomy day? Were the birds chirping? Were the flowers dancing in the garden? Were you clouded with fear or clouded with joy? You paint the mood. You use adjectives. Remember, adjectives are describing words, descriptive words, to paint the mood in your introductory paragraph. Or you may come up with an interesting fact. Remember, a fact is not based on your own opinion. A fact may be deduced from a study or from a research or from a textbook or from news. You may come up with fact to open up your introduction. You may use sound effect, but I'm not a fan of sound effect. If you're not sure about the usage of sound effect, please disregard this effect. Or alternatively, the point that I forgot to include here, pardon me, is to use an idiom or an idiomatic expression to say, it never rains but pours. There's an idiom, then you substantiate what really happened. So you either use a dialogue, use a question, but the most important one that I may say, I will advise you to use is this one. You use what? You use a vivid, pardon me, you use a vivid description. Vivid description, you are just breathing life into the events and the words by using words. You breathe life into the events. You bring your story to life. You breathe life into your story by using descriptive words to say, as I was trembling in my boots, not knowing what to do, clouded with fear, right? I took a glance outside, only to find the sun was smiling. The trees were dancing, alarming me that indeed it was going to be a good day. Listen to that. I just came up with that. I've breathed life into my essay by using descriptive. You paint the mood in your introductory paragraph. Now let us break them one by one. I have an example here of using a dialogue, but I'm not a fan of using a dialogue. Remember, dialogue, it's the usage of direct speech, where you literally quote what the other speaker said and then the other person said. Hurry, or you'll be late, called my mother from the bottom of the stairs. Today, of all days, you want to be on time, close quotation. If I had only known what that day would bring, I would have stayed in bed. What a beautiful introduction. I see the use of dialogue here. Remember, out of the 5 tips that I'm giving you on how to narrate, you cannot use the entire 5, otherwise it becomes too much. You can at least use 2. You describe the mood and here and there you add dialogue, right? Or you describe the mood here and there, you add idioms, it's okay. You cannot use the entire 5 to narrate your story. Otherwise, you're going to spoil the goodness of your story, okay? Now, just look at this introduction. To say, I can see this action there. The mom said, you need to hurry. And then she further said, today you cannot be late. And then this introduction leaves us with a suspense, because it says that if I had only known what that day would bring, I would have stayed in bed. And then that's the end of your conclusion. Pardon me, end of your introduction. Remember, you are just introducing your story. Don't spoil your story by going all out in the introductory paragraph. 3 to 4 lines are sufficient for an introductory paragraph. And then you leave the reader with a suspense so that we get more interested to read further actually what happened on that day. So I can already see from the introduction that this was going to be a very bad day, because why would he say that I could have stayed in bed, right? So you keep it relatively short. You paint the mood for us, or you can use a dialogue. Now let us go to the usage of a question. If you don't want to use a dialogue in your introductory paragraph, you can also, the other option is to use a question, but ensure that it's a thought-provoking question. Have you ever had a day when you wished you had stayed in bed? Wow. As I rushed to catch the bus on what seemed to be a perfectly normal day. I had no idea that I had no idea what was ahead of me. Beautiful introduction. Have you ever had a day when you wished you had stayed in bed? A very good rhetorical question. Again, I can sense that something bad is going to happen in this essay by just reading the introduction. And again, this introduction, it left us with a suspension because we want to read further as to what really happened that made you to wish to stay in bed that day. All right? 3 to 4 lines are sufficient for your introductory paragraph. Now we move along. Now, my favorite one, it will be a vivid description. Oh my God. Listen, you breathe life into the event. The sun was warm on my back as I raced towards the waiting yellow school bus. Instead of saying, I was waiting for my bus, I was waiting for the school bus, that's a boring essay. Make it colorful with words. Describe those gestures, describe those objects if they are there. Not only is it a school bus, but it's a yellow one. That's an adjective. The word yellow is used to describe the kind of bus that we are talking about, okay? And then the sun was warm on my back as I raced towards the waiting school bus, as I nestled into the worn leather seat. Instead of saying I sat down, listen to this, as I nestled into the worn leather seat. So that bus had seat, but they are worn out. It means that they are old, they are worn out. So I've described the kind of seat that I occupied in this bus. That not only is it maybe a comfortable seat or a cushioned seat, but the seats are worn out. I was greeted by the friendly voices of other excited children. Not to say Tabo greeted me, but what kind of voices were greeting me? The friendly one, description. You know, I'm breathing life into those voices. They were not only just voices, but what the friendly one. So I've created an atmosphere. I've created a mood using what? Using words. The look on my face was one of confidence and contentment. With a jerk, the bus rumbled down the road. How? Not to say the bus just passed and no. What did it do? To describe that exciting movement, or to say a jerking movement of the bus, to say that with a jerk, the bus rumbled down the road and I was on my way into one of the worst days of my life. Great introduction. Now it left us with suspension again, because I want to find out from the second paragraph what really happened on that day. All right. And then if you don't want to have a vivid description, for those who are very serious in life, you can have what you call interesting facts. Now you go to the facts. You rely on the facts now to narrate your story. Shock has been known to kill 10-year-olds. It can cause their brains to explode and their hearts to stop dead still. This is a fact. Even though the source is not acknowledged here, it's a fact. It's not an opinion. These facts raced through my mind as I stood dumbfounded in front of my 5th grade class. I wish I had stayed in bed. All these introductions adhere to the same topic. It was the worst day of my life. And just from painting the mood with vivid words, from using facts, from using a question, from using, we started with not using a question, pardon me, from using a dialogue, we further went to using a question, a vivid description, and then we went to now an interesting fact. You can use factual information, but in most cases, what I can advise, use a vivid description or rhetorical question or idioms in your introductory paragraphs. And then make sure that you leave us with what? With a suspension, so that we can continue to read your essay. Another form is the sound effect. We've got what we call onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia are words that are used to represent a sound. A snake will hiss. It's a movement of it. It will hiss. The bell will ring. The word ring, it becomes onomatopoeia because it's a sound that is produced by the bell. So we've got the word buzz, the sound of the alarm clock drowned in my ears as I struggled to come awake. With a start, I sat straight up in bed. This was my big day and I had to be on time. We don't know what kind of a big day you are going to talk about, but already I know that something good is going to happen in this essay. Now, let us go to the build-up. We have beautiful introductions now. We are narrating a story. We've got intriguing, thought-provoking introductions that left the reader in suspension. Make sure that now, in the second paragraph, you give us the most important aspect of your story, which are, be sure your story has paragraphs. They tell when you're switching time, place, topic, or speaker, and they help break the page up so it is not just a solid block of writing. Remember, an essay consists of a body of paragraphs. Now, in the second paragraph, it is important to at least highlight the setting where action is taking place or where action took place. Remember, we are narrating in a past tense. The people or characters that were involved in that story. The date might be mentioned or time. And to say it was on the 4th of December, 4th of December during a gloomy season of winter, awaiting for my midterm results at my school. The setting, I know it's your school. The time, I know it was mid-December or November. And then I know that the person involved in the story should be you and your teachers because you are waiting for your results, or you and your family. So in the second paragraph now, tell us the setting, place, where action is taking place, time, and characters that are involved. But you don't put them, I would say, loosely hanging. Remember, you adhere to the same artistic style of writing. You cannot have a strong essay and then you neglect the body of your essay. It becomes very scanty and boring, and only concentrate on having a good conclusion or opening paragraph. There must be coherence. You must not spoil the good work that you have done in your introductory paragraph. And then also, how do you know when to start a new paragraph? Because we say now in an essay, you're telling a story, remember. When you switch ideas or when you move from one place to the other, for example, here we're talking about maybe I could have stayed in bed. So I assume that this essay is all about having a bad day, right? So your essay must have a logical arrangement of ideas. It must flow accordingly. You started in the morning. You can't just now in the second paragraph, it's already in the evening. You have spoiled your essay. Now you follow the day with regard to time. Okay, your mom called you out that you cannot be late. You raced downstairs to prepare yourself quickly. Only if you knew that, you could have stayed in bed. Then in the second paragraph, you introduce the setting, time, place, and what happened. Now in the third paragraph, I expect you to now start unfolding your day until you get to the climax, what really happened that day, that which qualifies that day to be the worst day of your life or to be the best day of your life. So in the third paragraph now, at least I need the introduction of the problem, right? So you need to switch between paragraphs, but ensuring that the ideas do flow, right? Do not have haphazardly stated ideas that do not even correlate to us. Each and every paragraph must feed into the second one to say, oh, okay, this is what happened in the morning, and then around in the midday, this is what happened. And at least now in the third paragraph, you should be at least giving us a tip of an iceberg where now you introduce the problem to us to say, little did I know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will happen, and then you support that with reasoning, right? And then when you start on a new topic, you need a new paragraph. When you skip to a new time, remember it's no longer in the morning, maybe it's during break at school, you're still narrating a story. You need to, when you switch time, you cannot switch time in the same place where you talked about the events that happened in the morning. Otherwise, now you are distorting your essay and you cannot afford to do such. And then when a new person begins to speak, if you are introducing another character, it might be a friend and aunt in your story, do that in a new paragraph so that you don't get confused as to what is happening in the story. Remember, coherence is important when you want to produce a dramatic effect. Maybe there's that particular paragraph, maybe paragraph 5 and 6, where we are now reaching the climax to say, maybe this is the day I with trembling arms, I opened my report card only to find that I have failed, right? It's a dramatic paragraph that needs to be on its own, and then you need to further describe your emotions and perhaps what really happened on the day on that paragraph. So moving further along, I hope you're grasping now how to perfectly write essay. Number 3, capitalization and punctuation. Good people, punctuation is important. That comma, that full stop is important. You cannot have a sentence in English that starts from line 1 and then it ends in line 5. It's what we call run-on sentences, where now you even spoil the good ideas that you have. Punctuation is important. Where the idea ends, please put a full stop and start a new idea, even in the middle of the sentence. I'm repeating, avoid the usage of complex sentences. Where in instances where you would have more than 3 conjunctions in one sentence that started with line 3 and then it ends in line 4, and you say it's one sentence. Ideas, meaning, not even ideas, the meaning of what is that you are trying to convey, ultimately, it's inevitable, it will be lost. Because now you remember, you need to adhere to your story. Don't spoil your story. So if you see that this idea actually ends here, do not mind to put a full stop and use what I talked about in our previous segment. I spoke about the usage of logical connectors to say furthermore, additionally, contrary, that's where you can, logical connectors you can use to further augment, to further substantiate what you are saying, or to further support what you are saying. And then capital letters, proper nouns are written in capital letters. Sometimes you flow when you write your essays, grade 12s, you forget the important things such as capital letters. Your name, names of people, names of places, days of, these are small things that you may underlook, but they are of paramount importance when it comes to creative writing. Ensure that you punctuate and you capitalize, especially the use of proper nouns. And then don't forget that when you are using dialogue, but don't use dialogue too much in your narrative, right? Have a limited usage of dialogue. You enclose that within quotation marks to indicate that you are indeed quoting somebody else's words. Now, we are going to come into this, the most important aspect of writing. Remember words such as said, went, and put are dates. I love this statement. Use words that describe the action. Remember, you are telling a story. For any story to be interesting, action must be well described. Instead of saying, she said I'm lazy, she softly whispered into my ears that I am lazy. Listen to that. She softly, or she whispered with a soft voice that I'm lazy. It's quite powerful and intriguing that she said I'm lazy, right? So use adjectives, color your essay by describing what actions. And what I'm going to do now is just an example of phrases that you can maybe not necessarily use, but have an idea as to how you should phrase out or how you should color your essay. Not my dad went to work. That's boring. But you can say, my dad raced to work. You are describing action. Remember, I said you breathe life into those words. You breathe life into your story. Another example that I have, not Jane said she had a secret. That's boring. Then when you say, Jane whispered to Peter a wonderful secret. Remember, not only are we talking about a normal secret, but it is how wonderful. The word wonderful here, as a part of speech in English, we call it an adjective because it is used to describe the kind of secret that you are talking about. You're talking about what? A wonderful one. So hence I'm saying use a lot of adjectives and describing words. And then moving further along now, the wow words, okay? Here is just vocabulary inclined. When you talk about vocabulary inclined words, we're talking about I'm not necessarily advising learners to use bombastic words, but at least try to use extraordinary words, especially when you're in grade 12. You can't be saying we went to town as if like you are narrating as a grade 8 learner, but use words such as exceptional, extraordinary, incomparable, outstanding. These are not gigantic words. These are not big words, right? So instead of saying somebody is good, you can say somebody is actually outstanding, or she did a stellar work, or she did an outstanding work. And then as I move further along, again, this is just a mere example of words that you can use. Instead of saying don't use good, you can say acceptable, admirable, commendable, praiseworthy, accomplished. Instead of saying something is bad, you can say it's inadequate, it's severe, it is offensive. Instead of saying thing, you can talk about material objects. Instead of saying big, you can say considerable, you can say paramount, you can say prominent, you know. These are important. You can say far-reaching, grave, momentous, significant, substantial, prominent, or notable. These are just mere examples. And a lot of these words are not gigantic words, are not big words. I'm not saying you must write words such as I was discombobulated. It means being in an intense state of confusion. But you can, instead of saying being discombobulated, you can say I was clouded with fear. Huh? You were clouded with fear. So don't feel pressured to now reach out for, because now the problem is if you have too much of gigantic words or an overuse of big words in essay, you have what you call tautology. Tautology means now it becomes boring. But here and there in your simple sentences, you color your words with at least one. Instead of saying important, you can say pertinent, right? So it is important to also enrich your own vocabulary, and your educators are not there to enrich your own vocabulary. As a grade 12 learner, as in when you read even other content subject, whenever you come across a new word, you are also doing English in the midst of that subject. It's your duty to grab a dictionary and find the definition of that word, right? Descriptive words. Another one can be grumpy, bouncy, prickly, beautiful, massive, and then number 6, show, don't tell. I love the statement. Show us in a narrative essay, don't tell us. How do you show? You show by describing. The show, don't tell method of writing is when the writer is able to create a picture in the reader's mind to get away from the repetition of such empty words like went, big, or said, right? Instead of saying, I went to town, you say that I frantically raced to town. You are painting an image of action to me, that not only did I go to town, but I was racing. The action that I was performing there is to race. So remember, when you write your narrative essay, you always remember that we need to what? To show us, don't tell us. And how do you show us? Use adjectives and describing words. Another example, we say, instead of saying Susan exercised, boring, what can you say? Sweat. Can I highlight this? Can I highlight this? Let me highlight. And both, good. Sweat poured from Susan's forehead as she continued to do 100 sit-ups. Listen, Susan exercised, right? Now here, you are telling us, and that's not a good narrative. A good narrative is not telling, but a good narrative is showing. But in the second statement now, I'm showing you. To say sweat poured from Susan's forehead, I'm describing as she continued to do 100 sit-ups. So describe those actions in your story. As we move along now to the conversation. I'm not going to talk about the conversation. We talked about dialogue. I don't want to talk about conversation now. I want to talk about the use of figurative language in essay writing. You know, figures of speech are quite important if you want to become a good writer. In actual fact, if you are a good reader, if you normally read novels, you know that the best writers like your Chinua Achebes and so forth are able to use linguistic devices that help to drive the point home. By describing the action, you can use figurative expressions. A simile and metaphor, they're both used to compare. The difference is that in a simile, I'm going to compare using the word as tall as a giraffe or beautiful like a rose. But if I say a rose, you are a rose, it means that I've compared you to a rose directly without using the word as or like. Then alliteration at the repetition of consonants at the beginning of the word. Betty bakes bread. I've repeated B, B, B. So alliteration is repetition of consonants at the beginning of the word. And then onomatopoeia, those are sound words. Like if you say hush, she screamed that we must keep quiet. You know, hush it's a word that represents what? It's a word that represents a sound. Metaphor, comparison between two unlike things that have something in common without using like or as. Patty was a raging tiger when she lost her lunch money. You know, listen, this person was compared to a tiger to show the emotions that erupted when she realized that she lost her lunch money. So instead of saying that she was angry, I said that she was raging like a tiger, because we know how a tiger is fierce, and especially when it's angry. So I compare the state of anger that she was to that one of a lion. You see, these are describing words instead of just saying plainly that she was angry. During the night, the forest was a dark, frightening battlefield. So I'm comparing now a forest to a battlefield to say what is similar between a forest and a battlefield is that it was one, frightening, one, two, it was also how? It was also dark. So it is quite important to use those descriptive words. I think I went into greater length and I've done justice in as far as trying to show you guys how to really use descriptive words to breathe life into your essay. Now I'm going to take you back again into the beginning of your essay. In the beginning of your story, you should introduce your characters. I talked about that. You paint the mood in the introductory paragraph, like the examples that I had earlier on. And then the reader should also know about the world your character lives in. The setting is important. We need to know where action took place in your narrative. And there's something about each of the characters in your story. The beginning of your story is also the place where your plot, the problem is first introduced. But you cannot introduce your problem in the first paragraph. Remember, you're going to leave us in suspense so that now you can introduce the problem maybe in paragraph 2 and 3. And then after doing that, we move to the middle part, which is now the climax of your essay, the nub of your essay. Your story needs to build to something exciting, or maybe something sad. That's what you call the climax. Write about a simple conflict, a task that must be completed, a question that must be answered, or a barrier that must be overcome. Now listen, earlier on, our introductory paragraphs were centered around a day that was bad, because remember we said we could have, had we known, we could have stayed in bed, right? But then now when you get to paragraph at least 3 and 4, I need you to introduce the problem. What happened in paragraph 3? You give us the problem. To say, this is the day I raced to school with joy. Little did I know that I maybe, as I was awaiting in the line, nervously awaiting my teacher to call out my name, with trembling arms, I received my report card, only to open it and smile was swallowed by tears and fear, simply because I realized that I failed. I've introduced the problem. Now I'm reaching the climax. That's where now the problem is. You need to know, after finding out that you failed, what really happened. There must be at least a solution to it. And then in your conclusion part, you're going to use the topic to conclude your essay. So you have the beginning, you've got the rising action, you've got the climax, and you've got what? Your resolution. Your resolution is the solution of the day, to say maybe what you have learned from your failure, what is that you can do better. Then you say, you close your essay to say, indeed, had I known, I could have stayed in bed the entire day and not move. And then in the middle part, you've got action, you've got dialogue, you've got sensory details, you've got thoughts and feelings. It's important to always paint the mood with regard to emotions. Were you frightened? Were you happy? Were you enveloped in fear? You know, such descriptions will help us to understand the mood, and also paint the atmosphere that which you find yourself, or you found yourself in your story. This is the big finish. The end should reveal how you overcame your problem. All conflicts are resolved and everything goes back to normal. Use the topic to conclude your essay. You said it was the worst day of my life. In our introduction, we already noted that we could have stayed in bed, and I talked about how I went to school, met my friends, we were laughing, and as the teacher with a squeaky voice announces our names, I was patiently awaiting her to call out my name. There she said, T.L.L, close quotation. With trembling arms, I received my report card, opening it, and immediately my laughter and smile were swallowed by fear and hate. You see, that is the problem. Now, the resolution would be, my friend saw my teary eyes and she gave me a warm hug, softly whispering into my ears that it will be better. I will help you to study next time. I then sat on a tight corner, defeated by fear and pain. Only had I stayed in bed. Indeed, this was the worst day of my life. Remember, the topic is that is the worst day of my life. What have I done here? I came up with the resolution. but I closed with a bang to say, indeed, this was the worst day off of my life. So what is important here when you narrate, you must breathe life into your story. In the last segment that I'm going to do, that I'm going to upload now, we are going to focus primarily on the use of idioms. Idioms can also help to paint the story. Idioms can also help to breathe life into your narrative essay. Good people, I hope this was a fruitful lesson. Remember that writing is a skill. Edit, follow all the steps of writing process, which is draft, plan, draft, proofread, edit, and then write the final draft. Once more, good luck.